Just then, Ryo encounters Hugh in his carriage, who invites Ryo in his carriage. On their way, Hugh says Arthur has already informed him about his heroic battle, but he can't just ignore his disobedience, so he has a job for him as punishment. Hugh tells Ryo that since he registered, he only has taken dungeon-related jobs, so as Ryo's punishment, he would be accompanying a group of merchants on a round trip to Whitnash. The next day, Nils and his comrades meet up with Ryo to ask for help with a quest. Ryo quickly notices how serious it must be, since Nils is speaking much more formally than usual. Nils explains that his hometown, the village of Abali, has issued a hunting request. Normally, he would have taken it on himself, but the request is rated for D-ranking adventurers and above. Ito explains that he and Nils were only recently promoted to E rank after helping defeat the Great Tidal Boar, but even so, they still don't qualify. Nils then asks Ryo if he would temporarily join their party so they can take the quest together. Ammon points out that the targets are skeletons and goblins, which is unusual since those creatures don't normally appear in the same area. Hearing this, Ryo smirks, thrilled at the chance to finally fulfill his long-time dream of fighting skeletons. He immediately tells them he's in. Later that day, they all go to Hugh and inform him that they plan to accept the quest. Now, with Ryo's assistance, Hugh begins by explaining that the request originally came from Kailadi. Nils replies that he already knew, and adds that the request had been forwarded to Lune after nobody in Kailadi could complete it. Hugh nods, but adds that Kailadi had already dispatched adventurers twice before. The first was an E-rank party, the second a D-rank party. Ryo and the others find it hard to believe that even a D-rank group failed at something that sounds as simple as hunting skeletons and goblins. Hugh explains that according to the D-rank party's report, their problem was the lack of cooperation from the village. Things got so bad that the entire village turned against them. Ammon suggests maybe that village has always been hostile to outsiders, but Nils disagrees, saying that while they're not the friendliest people, they would never go as far as open hostility. Putting that aside, Hugh smiles and admits he feels relieved to have Nils and his comrades taking on the request. Still, he warns them to be careful, since the E-rank party came back badly wounded. They had reported facing over 30 skeletons. Even so, Hugh believes that with Ito as their priest, the team should be able to handle it as long as they avoid carelessness. He reminds them that they still have a couple days to prepare for the journey, so he tells them to do their best and, most importantly, return home in one piece. The next day, the group begins their journey to Abali. Surprisingly, the trip doesn't take long. They realize they're traveling faster than the adventurers who attempted the quest before them. Ammon guesses this is proof that their daily stamina training has paid off. Maybe all that brutal running really was worth it after all. On arriving, some of the locals greet Nils warmly, saying it has been a while. Ryo notices this and feels a bit relieved that the villagers are on good terms with Nils. At least that means he wasn't kicked out for being some kind of public enemy. Ryo had assumed Nils was an exile, since just by looking at him, he always seemed like the type to cause trouble. To Ryo, it only felt natural to think Nils had been banished and forced to become an adventurer. Nils gets a little nervous after hearing that assumption, so he quickly changes the subject by suggesting they go meet the mayor and ask about the situation. Nils opens the door of a cabin and finds Bulan, the village mayor, standing inside. Bulan can't believe his eyes that Nils has finally returned home. After giving each other a hug, Bulan remarks that Nils looks far more mature now. Nils laughs, insisting that can't be true since he has only been gone for about a year. But Bulan insists there is something different about him. He no longer has the same reckless, troublemaker attitude he was known for before. The others overhear this and can't help but snicker among themselves. Bulan then notices the group standing behind Nils and asks who they are. Nils introduces each one as members of his party, and after exchanging greetings with Bulan, they all sit down at a table. Once seated, they explain to Bulan that they have come to take on the infamous hunting request. Bulan admits he feels Nils's group might stand a better chance than the previous adventurers, especially since Nils already understands how things work in their village. With that aside, Nils brings up the issue of the second adventurer party. He says their report claimed the village refused to cooperate with them, so he asks Bulan what really happened. Bulan takes a slow sip of water before answering. He explains that everything began when skeletons started appearing in the forest. At first, they were spotted only occasionally in the eastern woods, but over time their presence became constant. Later, goblins began showing up as well, but this time in the southern region women of the forest. That was why the request was made to have them hunted down. However, Bulan continues, the first adventurer party caused a huge problem. They chose to fight in a place where they shouldn't have, spilling blood deep within the southern forest. Because of that, when the second adventurer party arrived, the villagers reacted with anger and drove them away. Bulan admits that asking outsiders to be mindful of where they fought was asking a lot, especially since they had been in a life or death struggle. But Bulan explains that the people of the village have been told for generations to avoid that particular place. Hearing this, Nils finally understands why the villagers treated the last adventurer party so coldly. He then turns to his comrades and apologizes, admitting that they probably aren't following everything that has been going on. Nils explains that it's tied to a local custom, but it also involves the village secrets. Since he can't share the full details without the council elders' permission, he politely asks them to be patient. Later that night, while Nils is away trying to get approval from the council elder, Rio and the others chat with Nils's younger siblings. They tell the group that ever since childhood, Nils never cared much about farming. All he ever wanted was to leave the farm behind and become an adventurer the moment he was old enough. But after their parents passed away, he stayed in the village until last year to raise his siblings until they were strong enough to survive on their own. Hearing this, Nils's comrades admit it sounds just like him even if he doesn't act like it. He is actually very caring. Nils's younger brother adds that he doubts anyone in the village would oppose them handling the hunt. The last adventurer party ignored traditions and recklessly rushed into the woods, but since Nils knows the customs well, there shouldn't be any problems this time. A few moments later, Nils returns from the council and announces that they've been granted permission to carry out the hunt. He suggests that tomorrow they focus on the goblins first, and after that, deal with the skeletons. He also says he received permission to share important information with them, though he stresses they must keep it confidential and never tell anyone else. Nils begins by explaining that there are two special things about this village. The first is the guardian beast that lives in the forest. Rio is shocked, since this is the first time he has heard of such a thing. Ito chimes in, saying he has heard of certain villages having guardian beasts, though he didn't realize this was one of them. At the mention of this, Rio grows excited, imagining the guardian being corrupted by an evil god and attacking them on the way. Seeing Rio lost in his own fantasies, Nils pulls him back to reality. Rio admits he might have gotten carried away, then asks about the second important thing. Nils explains that it concerns the village shrine, but the elder insisted on explaining that herself. Since it was already late, they would have to wait until the next day to hear about it. The next morning, Bulan takes the group to the area where most goblin sightings had been reported. Normally, children play here, but for now they have been warned to stay away though. Of course, some still break the rules. Hearing this, Rio teases Nils, saying he must have been that type of kid, which clearly strikes a nerve with him. At that moment, the others notice several goblin footprints. In the same instant, Rio looks into the distance and senses that more than 10 goblins are already on their way and will arrive within 5 minutes. Hearing this, Nils suggests they take down all but one goblin, then follow the survivor back to its den to wipe them out all at once. They venture deeper into the forest, where Rio uses his ice bind technique to freeze several goblins, letting the others finish them off with their swords. As planned, they spare one goblin and allow it to escape back to its den. It leads them to the mouth of a cave, where they see a large gathering of goblins. On arrival, Rio casts ice bind once again, and the others cut down the frozen creatures with ease. Just when they think the fight is over, a massive goblin general steps out from the shadows with a crushing aura. Ammon and Nils immediately recognize it as the same type of monster they fought during the Great Tidal Boar. Convinced they stand no chance, they brace themselves for defeat. But at that moment, Rio summons ice chains that wrap around the goblin general, dragging it into the ground and restraining it completely. All that remains is for Nils to deliver the finishing blow. On the way back, Rio tells Nils he's relieved they managed to win without casualties, and the best part is that they secured the goblin general's magic stone. Nils nods in agreement. When they return to the village, the elder, Mistress Nasu, praises them for defeating the goblins. She tells them she knows they must be tired, but their next task is to head into the forest and face the guardian beast. However, she warns them there is a chance the beast may be corrupted, in which case they will have no choice but to fight it. Rio realizes this means he might actually get the chance to battle a guardian beast, and he once again drifts into his fantasies. Just as Nasu leaves, Ito Ito notices a strange item attached to her staff and quietly wonders what it could be. As they venture deeper into the forest, Ito's curiosity gets the better of him, so he asks if the charm on Nasu's staff is a crest of the Earth Mother Goddess. Nasu confirms that it is and even praises Ito, saying he must be a well-learned priest to recognize it. Ryo, however, has no idea who or what the Earth Mother Goddess is. Ito explains that long ago, the Goddess of Light and the Earth Mother Goddess were part of the pantheon of 7. But as time passed, people assumed all priests only worshipped the Goddess of Light, which caused the 6 other deities to fade into obscurity. Hearing this, Ryo asks Nasu if that means she can't use elemental light healing magic. She replies that she can indeed use healing magic, but it's different from what the temple priests use. In fact, since she serves the Earth Mother Goddess, she doesn't even need incantations to cast spells like most priests do. Before long, they arrive at the guardian beast's den. Nasu calls out, announcing that she has brought people to take on the hunting request. Ryo can't hide the excitement on his face. He secretly hopes the guardian beast is corrupted so he can fight it. But when the guardian emerges, it turns out to be a massive blue wolf that greets Nasu like an old acquaintance. Ryo is instantly disappointed, realizing there won't be a battle after all. The guardian beast barely acknowledges the others, but when it looks at Ryo, it takes an interest and introduces itself as Enkusi, asking for Ryo's name. Nasu and Bulan are stunned, because never in history has a guardian beast casually revealed its own name. Enkusi explains that he never shared it before since humans always struggled to pronounce it, but meeting a water magician makes him feel it would be rude not to. The guardian beast goes on to explain that he has some relation to the fairy folk, and simply being near Ryo makes him feel at ease. Ryo recalls that Sira once mentioned the fairy king liked him, and he starts wondering if he has some hidden trait that appeals to fairies. He thanks Enkusi for the kind words, but Enkusi insists he's the one who should be grateful. Meeting Ryo makes him feel as though he'll live 1,000 years longer, though in truth, he only has a few decades left. With that aside, Guardian Beast gets serious and explains the details of the hunt. He says there are about 30 skeletons inside the shrine. However, he warns them that one particularly powerful skeleton is also sealed there. Since the shrine alone isn't strong enough to hold it, he has been containing it himself. Once they clear out the others, he will release that one for them to fight. Then a couple minutes later, Ito uses his priest magic to defeat the last of the lesser skeletons. The group then stands before the shrine, ready to face the stronger foe. They open it and are shocked to see an arch skeleton emerge. Ryo quickly creates ice hammers for each of them, explaining that he will restrain the monster while they use the hammers to wear it down. He signals to Enkusi, who releases the arch skeleton. It charges forward with incredible speed, but Ryo